Let me ask you something simple. Have you ever sat in a crowded room, surrounded by the hum of easy conversation, and felt a sudden, profound sense of distance? You watch the way the light catches the dust motes in the air, or you find yourself tracing the subtle tension in a stranger's smile, while the chatter around you feels like a radio tuned to a frequency you can no longer hear. You aren't being difficult. You are simply weighing 10 different possibilities for every one sentence spoken. Think back to when you were very young. There was a time when a tree was just a tree. You could run your hands over the bark and simply be there, in the sunlight, without the weight of why. But as the years passed, that innocence shifted into an intricate, restless observation. Now, you don't just see the tree. You see its roots struggling beneath the concrete, its desperate bend toward the light, and the way its quiet endurance mirrors your own unseen battles. If this resonates with you, it is important to understand that your silence is not disinterest, it is depth. You are a deep thinker. But here is the core paradox of your existence. The very sensitivity that allows you to dive for pearls on the ocean floor of thought is the same mechanism that makes you feel like you are drowning in the shallows of daily life. The mind that was once your sanctuary, helping you map the world to keep yourself safe, has become a labyrinth of what-ifs and maybes, turning the simple act of existing into a tireless analytical labor. To be a deep thinker is to possess a nervous system that refuses to skim the surface. In psychology, this is often characterized by high-trait introspection. Most people move through the world reacting to stimuli, but for you, thinking is as involuntary as breathing. You are constantly scanning for meaning, not because you seek conflict, but because why feels like oxygen to your soul. This isn't just a personality quirk, it is a neurological signature. Modern neuroscience points to a region called the default mode network. In the average person, this network activates during rest or daydreaming. However, in the mind of a deep thinker, the network is an ever-raging storm of connections, constantly weaving, comparing, and reflecting. Your brain has literally built stronger neural pathways between your emotional and analytical centers, meaning you cannot just turn off your thoughts, because your logic and your feelings are one and the same. This leads to a state known as metacognition, the ability to think about your own thinking. While others use this occasionally, you live inside it. It is as if you are standing outside yourself, watching your own thoughts pass by, questioning their patterns, and rearranging them like pieces of a puzzle that never quite fits. Furthermore, you likely engage in what researchers call depth processing. You don't just record facts, you encode experiences with rich emotional associations and symbolic weight. This is why nostalgia hits you with the force of an ecosystem, and why a brief kindness can feel cosmic, while a small betrayal feels like a collapse of the universe. Your mind is not a simple camera, it is a high-powered microscope, and while that microscope reveals the breathtaking hidden structures of human emotion, it also makes it nearly impossible to ignore the microscopic fractures in everything and everyone around you. But we must speak about the shadow side of this gift. When you see the world in layers, you often find yourself living in a state of perpetual translation. You are constantly translating your complex internal world into the shallows of common language just to be understood. It is exhausting to feel like you are speaking a language of color to a world that insists on seeing in grayscale. This often leads to a specific type of loneliness, not the loneliness of being alone, but the loneliness of being unwitnessed. You notice the shift in a partner's tone, the flicker of doubt in a friend's eye, or the unspoken grief in a room. And because you see it so clearly, you assume others do too. When they don't, the distance between you and the world feels like a canyon. You begin to use your intellect as a shield, overanalyzing every interaction to find safety. Yet the more you analyze, the further you drift from the simple warmth of connection. Your metacognitive surveillance has kept you safe, yes, but it has also kept you separate. So, how do you find your way back? The answer isn't to think less, it is to feel more. It is about moving from observing life to inhabiting it. The final stage of a deep thinker's journey is the realization that while your mind can map the ocean, your body is the only thing that can actually swim in it. You must learn to recognize when your depth has become a detour, a way to avoid the vulnerability of the present moment. It's okay to let the tree be just a tree again, even if only for a minute. You don't have to solve the mystery of the universe every Tuesday afternoon. Your depth is not a problem to be solved. It is a landscape to inhabit it. When you stop trying to translate your complexity for everyone else and simply allow yourself to be complex, the right people, those who aren't afraid of the deep end, will find their way to you. Your silence isn't a wall, it's an invitation. There is a specific, quiet grief that lives in the chest of a deep thinker, an invisible grief for the simple life you feel you can no longer access. While others find comfort in the broad strokes of reality, you are haunted by the nuances. Every conversation is a study of emotion, every silence a question, every glance an entire story that you feel compelled to read to the end. As Carl Jung once suggested, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. For you, this acceptance is hindered by the fear that your depth makes you too much for the world to hold. You have learned to sacrifice your authenticity for a hollow sense of belonging, shrinking your vast internal galaxies to fit into the small talk of a dinner party. This is the emotional tax of existential thinking. You don't just wonder if you are successful, you wonder what success means in the face of an infinite universe. You don't just feel sadness, you feel the weight of every version of yourself that didn't survive to the present moment. You live with the curse of Descartes. I think, therefore I am. But for you, this isn't a philosophical triumph, it's a loop. Thinking confirms your existence, but it also threatens to consume it. The core fear driving this is not insecurity, but a desperate search for a truth that doesn't exist yet. You replay a sentence from 10 years ago, not to punish yourself, but to map the geography of your own soul, trying to understand why you were who you were back then. You carry memories not as simple snapshots, but as entire emotional ecosystems. It is exhausting to live in a world where everything matters, where every small betrayal feels cosmic, and where you cannot numb yourself even when you desperately want to. As you moved into adulthood, these traits didn't just stay personality quirks, they morphed into sophisticated coping strategies. You must realize that the following behaviors are not your true self. They are the armor you built to survive a world that moves faster than your heart. You might recognize yourself in these 6 manifestations. First, the social chameleon. You have become an expert at nodding along. You smile politely in meetings while your mind is miles away, analyzing the subtext of a colleague's tone or the structural flaws in a company's logic. You hide your depth to avoid the exhaustion of explaining it. Second, the selective vault. You move slowly when it comes to trust. You test the depth of others' intentions before opening the door, but when you finally do, you open it all the way, leaving you dangerously vulnerable to those who don't operate with your same level of care. Third, the chronological loop. Your mind exists across multiple timelines simultaneously. You are replaying the past, dissecting the present, and imagining 100 versions of the future all at once. This leads to rumination, a repetitive focus on mistakes, not for self-harm, but in a frantic search for closure that may never come. Fourth, the emotional sponge. Because of your high empathy and pattern recognition, you absorb energy that isn't yours. You can sense the tension in a room or a fake smile before a single word is spoken, often leaving you detoxing in solitude for days just to find your own voice again. Fifth, the decision paralysis. In professional settings, you often hesitate. It isn't because you are unsure, but because you are weighing the invisible threads and downstream consequences that others overlook. You see the complexity where others see a simple task. And finally, the truth seeker's isolation. You struggle to take sides in conflicts because you see the shades of gray and the unseen battles of everyone involved. This makes you a bridge between people, but it often leaves you standing on that bridge alone, misunderstood by those who prefer the comfort of certainty over the messy reality of truth. The first step of unlearning is to stop gaslighting your own sensitivity. You are not dramatic or too complicated. You are a detective of emotion. You must begin to witness these patterns not as flaws to be fixed, but as a system that is simply trying to process too much data at once. You have spent your life trying to understand the world. The healing begins when you finally try to understand the person doing the thinking. The hardest part of being a deep thinker, perhaps the greatest challenge you will ever face, is learning when to stop thinking. It is a realization that comes quietly, often after years of exhausting your spirit in the search for a truth that feels perpetually out of reach. You have likely spent your life believing that if you could just analyze a problem long enough, if you could just replay that conversation from 10 years ago one more time, you would finally find the closure you crave. But for a mind as intricate as yours, the pursuit of meaning can become a trap where you connect everything to everything until the web consumes you. Healing, then, is not about finding more answers, but about needing less. It is about the transition from a mind that drowns in the depth of its own thoughts to a mind that has seen clearly enough to float. This journey toward wholeness begins with a process of mapping rather than judging. You are already naturally inclined to draw the geography of your own mind, to know where each feeling lives and what its roots are. In the realm of psychological healing, this is your greatest tool for shadow work. Instead of viewing your tendency to overthink as a flaw or a form of self-punishment, you must begin to see it as information. When your mind begins to loop through what-ifs or dissect every sentence you spoke, you can pause and ask yourself what that fear is trying to protect. You are not a machine to be fixed. You are a story to be understood. By witnessing your own patterns, the way you might read too much into a stranger's silence, or the way you assume meaning where there is none, you can begin to detach on the noise and see the hidden structure of your anxiety. Part of this internal mapping involves inner child reparenting, specifically addressing that part of you that first learned that depth was a burden. There was a version of you who once saw a tree and simply felt its beauty, before that curiosity turned into a desperate need to understand its roots, its struggle for light, and its mirror to your own existence. Healing requires you to return to that innocence, to remember that not everything needs to be understood. Some things are simply meant to be felt. You must learn to give that sensitive, observant child the space to breathe. When the world feels too loud and your internal radio stations are all playing at once, you must give yourself permission to retreat into solitude, not as an act of loneliness, but as a sacred restoration. Solitude is your native language, and it is in that quiet that you find the truth that has been drowned out by the noise of the world. Choosing softness is an act of rebellion for a deep thinker. Because you feel the weight of things others overlook, the fading of laughter, or the way a stranger avoids eye contact, it is easy to become guarded or detached. You might stay silent to protect yourself, waiting for someone to show signs of depth before you ever open the door. But true healing involves the courage to be a bridge. It is the ability to connect your logic with your empathy, to see the flaws in humanity and still choose to love it. It is the realization that while you can analyze pain until it feels mechanical, you must also allow yourself to feel it until it becomes wisdom. This is the paradox of emotional complexity, the ability to experience joy and grief as two notes in the same song, recognizing that beauty and loss are always intertwined. To anchor your mind so it does not drift into an endless spiral, you must find ways to translate your reflections into something tangible. Whether through art, writing, or a conversation that heals, your thought must serve your life, not replace it. You must practice the quiet irony of sitting beneath a sky that does not explain itself, yet still feels infinite. As the philosopher once suggested, I think, therefore I am, but for your healing, perhaps the mantra should be, I feel, I observe, and I am complete without the answer. You are learning to live with the questions. You are learning that meaning is something you create with intention, not something you find hidden in a dark corner of your past. In a world that rewards speed, productivity, and the certainty of surface-level chatter, your depth is a rare and vital light. You are never meant to fit into the rush of life. You are meant to slow it down. You are meant to be the one who sees the invisible threads, who questions the obvious, and who finds the sacred in the mundane. Your silence is not a weakness. It is a filter of precision, a search for the truest version of reality. When you speak, you do so with intention, seeking to awaken ideas that linger long after the words are gone. This is not an illness to be cured, but a capacity to be honored. As we conclude this reflection, remember that your mind is not a problem to be solved, but a universe to be explored. The goal of this journey is not to become normal or to stop being a deep thinker, but to become whole. It is to accept that you will always see the layers, you will always feel the echoes of the past, and you will always crave the pearls at the bottom of the ocean floor. But you will do so with the understanding that you are safe in your depth. You are not alone in your quiet, and you are not broken in your complexity. If this exploration of the deep thinker's soul has mirrored your own internal landscape, I invite you to share this with someone who might be lost in their own thought storm today. Subscribe to join our community of observers, where we dive below the small talk into the architecture of the human heart. Never apologize for your silence, and never shrink your thoughts to fit into smaller rooms. The world needs your mind, your empathy, and your capacity to see through the chaos into clarity. For in the end, thinking deeply with intention is not just a way of understanding the world, it is an act of love. It is the most profound way to honor the fleeting beauty of being alive.